What's up, guys? Welcome to ElkShape YouTube. Timmy in the house. We are together and we're going to talk about elk hunting, and specifically want to discuss the 2020 elk season since it's just behind us, and kind of go over possibly the word reflections or just look back and see how we can improve.
Yeah, we're really just trying to make a journal to ourselves. So next year we can look back and hopefully learn from this, and maybe if you guys can pick up a few nuggets along the way. But we're just going to kind of sit back, talk about 2020 elk season, how it went.
Okay, well, so Tim and I did not hunt together. Tim has a business that he runs. He does this as his side hustle, and so we couldn't line up our schedules. Plus, my hunting schedule is pretty aggressive. I start hunting about mid-August, and I don't really stop much, just a few breaks here or there. But I do like to elk hunt all of September. That is something that I've done a long time. And so when I tell you this was my 19th year elk hunting, that's 19 years, and that's not like 19 seasons where I hunted 5 days or 7 days. That's 19 years of September. I've quit jobs for elk hunting, like several. So it was just like any other year. I felt like a kid in Christmas, man, just waking up and Merry September. It was a good year, and we'll go over mine, but first we're going to kind of go over Tim's since we didn't hunt together. He failed to plan and prepare ahead, and he didn't have, which a lot of guys didn't have, the foresight that Idaho was going to sell out its elk tags 3 months earlier than ever. Probably having something to do with COVID, but ultimately your plans kind of got squashed. You were headed to Idaho and you couldn't get a tag come June.
Yeah, I got caught in a weird mix-up where I applied for an Idaho tag and I thought that reserved me the right to buy a tag. It didn't. Anyway, long story short, I lived, I learned, I should have consulted. 19 years of elk hunting right next to me, and I just ended up elk hunting elsewhere. I went to Oregon, and yeah.
I had tags for Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming, all generals. I decided before the season that I would only hunt areas new to me. I wouldn't go to anywhere that I've been before. I did that for a couple of reasons. Number one, Wanderlust. I just wanted to see new country. Number two, I've kind of killed a lot of elk in North Idaho, where it's just kind of thick, nasty, steep brush country, and optics is not part of the equation. So I kind of wanted to hunt more open country elk, and I did it because it helps me with my ElkShape camps, kind of like appreciate who I'm talking to and how they are approaching their elk hunting season. Usually guys and gals are going to places that they've never been, and they can't scout because they live so far away. So it was kind of a challenging year, set that in front of us, but I can tell you what, I don't regret it. It was really an awesome experience. So do you want to go first on Oregon?
Yeah, I just this is like a journal to myself, really, what I learned, what I would do differently, and hopefully you guys can pick up a couple nuggets. We are going to do a day-by-day elk season, the public land hustle. You're going to get to see all this stuff unfold. You're going to get to see bulls die. You're going to get to see us chase elk, do a public land, DIY, 100% the whole way. Dan went September to October. I did a lot of days in September, and we're looking forward to sharing that with you. Let's get into, well, it's fresh on the brain. Let's get into elk season, what I learned. I think the number one thing I'm taking away from 2020 elk is that I need to define what good elk hunting is that I want to do. I hear Dan reference a lot, I want to be in elk every day, and I think that's a great baseline to chase. Being in or around or chasing bugles or some kind of elk hunting. And I got stuck in this weird kind of no man's land where I was finding elk, but I wasn't finding them consistently. And I moved around, I did the shuffle, but I spent a lot of time in no man's land, and I didn't spend as many days as I wanted in elk.
What we teach at ElkShape Camp is that no man's land where you're kind of in transition yourself, like you don't know where elk are at. Spend as little time as possible in that. And so how do you do that? It's usually not hiking. Like if you're hiking a long distance from ridge to ridge to ridge to ridge, hoping that you'll get into some elk, you're wasting a lot of energy and time. Those are your commodities when you're talking elk hunting. So how to find elk at night via the truck or four-wheeler or dirt bike or e-bike. How can you get an elk to vocalize, to let you know, okay, there's an elk over there? Finding terrain that is good for that. So can you get up on a rim and hike it for 10 miles and bugle all night and sleep in the next day? Can you get in your truck and drive national forest roads and bugle off all night until you've gotten something located? A lot of pro elk hunters will be like, oh, you don't need to do that. I'm not a pro elk hunter, but I'm telling you, you need to do that. Like, I hate hiking for elk. I hate like that transition time. So for the entire month of September and the 2 days in August and the 1 day in October, I hunted into elk, like seeing them, hearing them, communicating with them, and they were all brand new areas to me. So that's what I really want to show on our series, is how we found the elk and how we were able to stay in the elk.
You did a great job finding them, man, and that was so apparent going through the footage. And I've always relied on digital scouting. I haven't had a home front yet. And just a quick backstory, like, I'm not the world's greatest elk hunter. This was year 4 for me, punched my first tag last year. So I'm not Dan. I'm trying to kill elk more consistently. But my strength to this date has been finding elk online, finding elk on the internet. I don't have a home range of mountains where I can walk into and be like, oh, there's elk in those mountains. So I relied on that, but I kind of got burned a little bit this time. And just what you were talking about there, I did spend a lot of time hiking and looking for elk that way. I think I could have done that differently for sure. I think the other thing that I wanted to pivot to was I didn't adjust my tactics early enough. Dan and I were hunting totally different weather. I got a text from these guys like, oh, it was snowing on September something. And I'm like sweating, jumping in the river in the middle of the day in 90, 95 degree heat. So I think I should have pivoted sooner and just like hunted water holes, tried some different things other than like the normal run and gun. It was early season warm elk, and I think I could have done a better job like pivoting earlier.
Yeah, we got snowed on August 31st.
It's insane, man. It's 95 degrees, and these guys sent me a text.
We sat by a campfire for 5 hours just trying to wait out the weather so we could glass. And that was insane. And then it snowed again September 7th or 8th. And then it kind of got hot and drier. But Tim went to Oregon. I went to Idaho first. I brought a cameraman with me this year, Jake Webb. First time really having a dedicated cameraman. I still consider that solo elk hunting because his job was just to roll with the camera. Although I did start giving him more additional, I'd say like responsibilities. Like at one point, he had to start carrying a decoy because I was tired of getting busted by elk in more open country. And that's kind of where some of my weaknesses shined, was I couldn't get away with some of the moves I'm used to making on timbered elk and more the sagey, open, deserty elk country. I was getting picked off. That was new, but the biggest takeaways from my elk season hunting, Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming, was I have to do 2 things to be successful. This is your takeaway. This is why you're watching this video. The first thing is I have to think like an elk. I have to think like an elk in this particular land or terrain or landscape. And so in Idaho, these elk some of them wanted to get food that was 6 miles away. That meant that they were going to come off of a mountain range, go through a desert, and get into alfalfa pivots, and then turn around and get back 6 air miles back to whatever canyon that they wanted to. Other elk in certain mountain ranges in Idaho, there was 0 water in the mountains, and mountains could be 8 to 10,000 feet, and 0. And it's just a desert section of mountains, and they would come from the granite basins and staircase meadows up high, all the way down to the desert floor and drink out of cattle troughs. And they would do that every day. Elk are incredible. We couldn't do that day after day. The elk can, and that's how they made their living. So just when I figured out what the elk wanted for security, sanctuary, and then obviously hydration, nutrition, Then you add in, think like a man, your average elk hunter that's probably noticing and observing what I am and how they're going to attack these elk. And then basically I take their game plan, the elk's game plan, and I meet them all in the middle and figure out how I can intercept both parties and kill the elk. And that took probably 10 days in Idaho to really put the formula together to where I could be into elk when they get to their bedroom, and then make vocalizations or sneak in and get a shot. And that's something I really haven't had to do, is really worry about other hunters and what they're gonna do. But we're talking trailheads with 13 to 20 trucks at one trailhead, and every road bottlenecked, every camp spot taken, people coming in from every direction. And so to me, that was really challenging and rewarding. And here's what I'm gonna tell you, Tim, I don't think that's going away. It's not like our elk numbers are just continuing to blow up. We have everybody's elk hunting. It is cool. Archery knowledge is accessible, and there's predation. And so these elk are smart and educated. So I don't think it's going to get any easier, but I'm excited because that means we're just going to have to work harder.
Man, and what I'm really hearing there, and what I've seen from you when I've hunted the little bit I have, is like, to be a consistent elk killer in multiple states is like you have to be a chameleon.
Oh my gosh, that's it.
And man, that's, I would just
And by the
label that
minute,
as like
not by the day.
Yeah, you're really good at that. Yeah.
We definitely started out the season behind spotting scopes and trying to pattern. We started doing stocks. We graduated to elk vocalizations and locator bugles. Then we moved into actual timber elk and setups. We packed a decoy. I've never used a decoy in my life, but we started packing 2 decoys a day and relying on the decoys. And then we started doing, sitting trails and water sources and trailing elk, being aggressive, being passive, catching them in transition, hunting them in their bedrooms. Like chameleon, change your tactics nonstop. And I think the last thing I would say, between Idaho, Wyoming, and Montana, and 19 years of elk hunting, shut up, put your calls away, and sneak into the elk's bubble where they are doing their thing. Watch out for the cows, watch out for the wind, and stay as close to the herd as possible, whether you're following them or if you're just sneaking into their bedroom and you're just gonna stay put and wait for that bull to get up and rake, to get up and get some water, or he's gonna get up and poke some of his cows and check them and see if they're in heat. That's the best situation because the bull's not on full alert. Now, I love calling in a big slobbering giant bull and using Phelps game calls and that interaction, but at the end of the day, I really don't have a lot of reps at that. If I'm really honest with myself, the majority of the elk I've killed in my career has come down to just be quiet, sneak in, and shoot them doing what they want to do.
Yeah, I think that's cool. I think that's knowing yourself and your style and playing to your strengths.
Yep.
And I mean, it played out that way. When I look back through my season 2, another thing I think I failed to do, but it was a weird year for me, and this is not like an excuse. 'Cause I knew the year it was. I was year 1 of starting a new business, a new commercial lease, and I just didn't devour the time behind the web like I normally would. So I didn't have like really solid backup plans. And to be frank, I wish I would have, because we did bounce around, and when we bounced around, we were just, man, it was tough.
Well, I relied on my e-scouting.
Yeah.
I started e-scouting. Some of my pins were dropped as late as December of last year. So December of 2019, I was looking at I had started e-scouting then. Remember that video series we do called 365 Prep? That's where I'll start e-scouting about now, looking ahead. And I had almost too many plans. Yeah. But at least I had vantages picked out.
That's good.
Access routes, loops. And so I was never like, it was always like, gosh, where should I go tomorrow? I have too many options, versus scratching your head going, I don't even know this country and I don't even know where to go tomorrow.
I was scratching my head.
That's the worst. I elk hunt for me and my family, and it's really a test of me, and if I can push hard and persevere and accomplish what I've set out to do. But there are people out there that are really successful at elk calling, and like Tim said, play to your strengths, but also be a chameleon. Like, have a Tim tactic, have a Dan tactic, have a Jason Phelps tactic, a Dirk Durham. Learn from as many resources and have as many tricks in your bag as possible, and be ready to play them, because you just have to be able to change at a moment's notice, because it's a dynamic, very fluid situation out there in those elk mountains.
Yeah. And kind of my final wrap-up conclusion, like the last thing I would change about this season that I'm going to do 2021 is I'm going to definitely elk hunt with a solid team of people. And probably a cameraman. I am not a good cameraman and or elk hunter at the same time. I'm good at doing one thing at a time.
Yeah.
The older I get, the better I am at doing one thing at a time. So when I'm thinking about framing up a shot on the camera, I'm not thinking about where to find elk. And there's too much competing efforts, and they both take up a lot of brain power. And that doesn't mean necessarily, I kind of like solo elk hunting. I kind of like it a lot in some weird, sick way. I think it's cool, but I don't think that I can be a great solo elk hunter and a great cameraman together. And that's going to be different next year.
Oh, that's good. That's cool.
Yeah. Well, that's what I've got, man. That kind of wraps up my season. There are ways people can learn more about elk hunting, and you offer some products that I think are pretty cool that you don't really talk about. So where can people learn more about elk hunting if they want an additional resource?
I'd love for anyone wanting to punch their tag in 2021 to come to an ElkShape camp. We're doing 7 across the U.S., 3 out east, 4 out west, and just find one, go to ElkShape.com and check it out. And if you like learning online, check out our resource called the Elk Collective, where we've teamed up with as many awesome elk hunters that we could find in one place. We brought them all together to learn their elk hunting style, and we brought it under one roof, and it's like the best digital resource I could think of for learning how to elk hunt and being successful year round.
Man, I watched the effort you guys put into that, and I know it's an excellent product. So I hope you guys have a chance to check that out. All the links will be down below. Swipe up, find the links. That's a wrap on this video today, guys. Thanks for being here. Thanks for watching. Do us a solid and subscribe to the channel if you're into DIY, blue-collar elk hunting, archery stuff. And we will catch you back for the next one.